Hey, everybody, and welcome back to episode 31 of the Overlay, a poker podcast brought to you by CCG Poker Radio and Paramount Social Club in beautiful Houston, Texas. We got Brandon on the line, my co-host.
I just have one question. How come Houston's always beautiful and CCG is just like, Chicago?
CCG, well, because right now it's like 40 degrees outside and I'm freezing.
Yeah, it's
so nice in Houston right now.
What is Houston in the fall? Like 70s?
Yeah.
60s?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah, that's great.
It's like 70.
That's my type of weather.
Super solid. All right,
I'm thinking about starting San Diego terrible games because of the weather.
Yeah, it's so much nicer in San Diego.
It's so nice.
Episode 31. We're going to do an episode today called Advanced Poker Lingo. Oh boy, I knew I was going to have trouble saying this. Advanced Poker Lingo 101 course, the beginner's level of advanced poker lingo. Can you have a beginner's level of advanced poker?
Yeah, I think it's tough, but if you think of it like we are all in the poker world, so we are way more advanced than everybody else, but this is like the beginning level
of the advanced level.
Well, right, like everybody in poker knows like the term hero call, but like that's why it's a beginner for the poker world. But like, if you said that in the real world,
nobody would have any idea
what you're saying. Right.
So everybody knows today, the advanced lingo course, the beginner advanced lingo course, good Lord, this is a weird name. The beginner advanced level course is going to be all about the different types of calls in poker, how to use the terms correctly, what the actual definition of those calls are, because Brandon is a little more tilted by this than I am, but so many people are telling a bad beat story, which one, nobody really wants to hear, and two, it's nothing worse than hearing a bad beat story and then have the person giving you the bad beat story use the terms incorrectly, right?
Right.
So this is a way for you to tell better bad beat stories.
Right. Like if you're going to tell me a bad beat story, like at least use the terms correctly so I don't get more tilted by you. Like I want to first be like, well, I don't really care what happened with your kings.
Incorrectly, yeah.
Right. I don't really care what happened with your kings because you can't even tell me the correct action.
Correct. Well, let's try it.
Yeah.
So what is the first, let's just go over the 6 different types of calls that we're going to go over today.
All right. So we have the 2 basic flat call and smooth call, which those are pretty basic. Those are like, you see those very often. Then you have the overcall. You have the cold call, you have the hero call, and this one, I guess it's like the crying call, which, we'll go over that. But yeah, so you really have, those are the 6.
Right.
And, flat call and smooth call get mixed up with each other a lot. Overcall and cold call get used incorrectly. And then I think people actually use hero call and crying call pretty correctly, but we'll still go over those.
They're the easier ones that don't come up as often.
Definition.
Right. All right. Well, what are we going to start with? Just a flat call?
Yeah, the flat call.
So give us a rundown. What's a flat call?
Well, flat call is pretty easy. I mean, you have somebody that raises, and then you call the raise. That's just a flat call. It's the most common call.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, yeah.
So for an example, is small blind, big blind, middle position raises to 3 big blinds, and then you're in the dealer button and you just flat call that raise. Correct?
Correct. Yeah. You're just flat calling a guy's opening range. It's basically the same as just saying I called. I called and I flat called. Same thing.
Okay. So when people just say I called, by definition, that's a flat call.
Correct.
Cool. Let's move into smooth call because I don't think I used this one correctly.
So smooth call is like when you have a strong hand and you're playing it passively with a hand that you normally would be raising, but instead of raising, you chose
to
the
smooth
passive
call.
approach of smooth calling.
So smooth call,
if somebody raises under the gun and then you have kings, you would normally be raising, but you chose to take the sneaky smooth call.
I got you. So smooth call is basically just a flat call, but
it's a form of the flat call.
Right,
yes.
but you have a premium. You have a premium hand, and that's when the smooth call comes in. So it's more of like part of the story, right? Be like, yeah, I had kings, and I just smooth called that guy.
Right. Yeah, it's smooth. It's supposed to look like non-suspicious, even though you're being very sneaky and suspicious.
They should have called it a sneaky call.
Yeah, the sneaky call.
The sneaky smooth call at CCG.
Yeah. So, I mean, I hate it a lot when people are like, I had 7-6 of clubs and then somebody raised and I smooth called. Well, no, you didn't smooth call.
I got you. By definition, it's that you just flat called at that point.
Correct.
Or you just called. You
like
could just say call.
Flop came 9-8-5 and I had 7-6 and I flopped the nuts and they bet and I just smooth call because I'm going to raise them on the turn.
Now you used it correctly.
Correct.
Wow. Better storytelling by Brandon and Ken from the Overlay, a poker podcast.
Trust me, I'm good at telling bad beat stories.
I don't think I've ever smooth called in my entire life, but that's just me. Is there a particular time, like, does it give any kind of like recommendations on when to smooth call? Like, should you be smooth call? What would be the reason for a smooth call, right? Like, if you have kings and somebody bet out in front of you, why didn't you 3-bet? What's the benefit of the smooth call? I mean, obviously you're trying to trap a player. I mean, is that the only reason?
Correct. Yeah.
Or to try to get like more action behind you.
That's another. Yeah. I mean that's another.
If you got that loose, aggressive player behind you, and you just smooth called with kings in hopes of somebody 3-betting pre-flop so that you could 4-bet them.
Like the exact definition, it says, as part of a strategy to induce an opponent to help you build a pot when you have a strong holding.
Laying in the weeds call.
Yes.
Nice.
Smoothly laying in the weeds.
Anything else you can think of? I think a smooth call is like a very like James Bond thing to do, right? Like you're just being like awesome. You're just I'm just
like you kind of look around, look to your left, look to your right, make sure nobody's watching, and then
try not to put out any tells. Acting meek. Isn't that like a thing though? When people are acting meek, that means their hand's really strong. Isn't that like one of the most basic tells in poker?
It is, but then you go the reverse, and then it just gets all screwed up.
Oof.
Like if you're a good player, you put off like reverse tells, like that's the next level.
We should probably have a poker tells episode, except I don't know enough about them to actually talk about them.
Me neither.
But like when a player's leaning into the table, that means they have a strong hand or a weak hand. And then when they're leaning back from the table, what does that mean? I think that's a thing.
I don't know. I know that directional betting and forcefully pushing out chips and spilling them is very weak because it's acting so strong. But I hate
really directional betting. You fire a bet at me, you're going to get raised.
I end up leveling myself on these live tells because I look at a guy who plays every single day and he looks so strong. And I'm just like, man, this guy is so strong. I fold. But it's like, wait, is he really this strong? Because he's acting like I end up leveling myself and not knowing if they are.
You end up going down the rabbit hole.
Or unintentionally doing this.
You're going down the rabbit hole of like overthinking things by like, well, what is he actually intending to do? Or is he intending to look this way because he's actually strong, but really he's just this?
Correct.
I get lost in those.
This guy plays poker every single day. Can he really be putting off a tell that's this obvious?
That's this basic, yeah.
And then I'm like, well, no,
very
it's
difficult
not. So then
to know.
It's the reverse. And so I try to honestly just go with like situational bet sizing and reads and that kind of stuff. Unless the guy's like actually like, or female is actually like a bad like fish. And then I'll use it and be like, all right, this guy really like, the old guy's like shaking his hand and he's putting out 400 on the river. Like, I mean, he just can't help himself here. Like I'm going to
Right. He just might have shaky old guy hands.
Correct. And he's getting like, there's times where you're playing in a big tournament. All of a sudden the guy just gets really quiet and he stands up in his chair and he's shaking and he's overbetting the pot. And you're like, oh my gosh, I got kings here. I fold. And you're just going to like, that's the time where I'll use the live reads. But if it's like, a person that plays every day or like a kid that's like, I feel like I'm getting psyched out and reverse crushed here. So I just don't take any of that into account.
Yeah, I think we talked about like the old guy versus the veteran in one of our episodes. I'm trying to look it up right now because I'm looking at all of the different episodes. But we did one where it was like episode somewhere in here. It doesn't matter. Poker Culture 201. What are poker players running? 101. We went over like the different types of players and how we were talking about how
Poker Culture 101, where we did stereotypes.
That's it. You're right. It is episode 10, Poker Culture 101 stereotypes, because we talked about like the crusty veteran versus like the young gun and how different actions from either type of player, and I'm air quoting that nobody can actually see because some players
felt that you were air quoting.
Yeah, nice. Because like some younger guys will make the same mistakes that we would put on like an older player just because they're just playing the game straight. That's not really fair. It's just, again, it's a stereotype which is never a good thing to do, but sometimes in the gambling world, you got to put people on a stereotype and then actually take those reads, which gets quite difficult at times.
You have to assign the stereotypes initially and then adjust later. Because otherwise you're just going to, if you don't have any, inclination about the person, you're way behind.
Which is why I feel that women or female poker players have such a huge advantage over men, because all men, right or wrong, I feel like always put women on like super tight and aggressive. So like I feel like women poker players can get off more bluffs than a standard guy player, because so many men put stock in the fact that like, oh, she's not putting chips in the pot unless she's got a stone cold winning hand. I'm out. You know what I mean?
I do.
And then you get a player like Jill Bryant. She's like, I had a busted flush draw. I got nothing. You're like, damn it.
Yeah, I think the best, it goes back. You need to be like, see, like with someone like Stacia or Jill, people like end up realizing that they're just psycho and not like, you don't generalize them with the typical female. You need to have somebody that like has a sweet, like, I don't like petite, like demeanor
Meek.
that actually pulls it off. No. You know what I mean? Because like everybody realizes by orbit 3 that Stacia's a psycho, and like
when you use the term psycho lovingly, because it's like she's just bombing that pot and she's gonna keep firing bullets until they go through.
It's awesome.
Yeah, she is a game that I envy.
Played with her and assigns her the female tight range.
Oh yeah, you're gonna lose money.
You're gonna lose money until 100%. You figure it out.
Yep.
Because she's just
pay attention, sir, because you're gonna lose money otherwise. All right, what's the next type of call?
Let's go to the cold call.
Okay.
So the cold call is, in my opinion, and we went over this on Top Poker Mistakes, the cold call is one of the worst calls.
Okay.
And one of the biggest mistakes a player can make.
Which was the last
cold
episode.
Call is when somebody raises and then maybe somebody 3-bets, and then you, who has no money in the pot, cold calls a raise and a re-raise.
So a cold call by definition is when you're calling 2 bets, a raise and a re-raise, and then you're cold calling that bet with a other player who already raised once in the hand, which again, they could 5-bet it. Is that a thing?
That would be 4-bet, but yeah.
Oh, raise, 3-bet, and then 4-bet. Gotcha. So if you get caught in the middle there by cold calling, could get yourself in a lot of trouble. Now, is there such a thing as a smooth cold call? Like if you have aces at that point and you got a Stacia type player behind you that already raised once in the hand, you think maybe she's going to 4-bet it and you can get like more action in there. I guess that's by definition, you could get a subsection of a cold call, could be a smooth cold call.
Correct. Like that's when like the cold calls are correct.
Beneficial.
Is when I mean, that's when you like sound the alarms, is when like an old guy cold calls. It just goes like under the gun, open, 3-bet. Now this guy's sticking in 8-9 big blinds into the pot when he's got nothing in there. Like it's almost
warning
passive.
Bells should be going off.
Right, but it's almost like passive because their hand is so strong, but they don't want to get stacked with aces. Like they have kings or queens, like, or jacks. Like these are the hands that you should be cold calling because you don't want to stick it all in and you be the 4-bet and then have a guy 5-bet jam on you and now you're just lost in la la land with jacks, queens, or kings. So like these are the hands you should be cold calling with. Like you shouldn't be cold calling with the ace jacks and the ace queen offsuits and that kind of stuff, which is the mistakes that people make. And they see raise, re-raise, like, dude, I got ace queen. I ain't folding. I ain't raising. I guess I'm calling. Well, that's where you get in the huge pot with medium holdings and you just lose the ace king and you lose the kings and you get coolered all the time and you think it's just unlucky. Like you can just avoid those spots.
I like it.
And again, it's when you don't have
and
any
cold
money
call.
in the pot.
I feel like cold call is more of a thing that happens. More happens in a tournament, right? Because I'm sorry, backwards. Actually, I feel like a cold call is something that happens more with a cash game. Because if you're in a tournament and there's a bet and a 3-bet and you've got aces, like you're just getting it all in there. Like unless you've got a massive chip stack or it's there's some kind of weird variable in there. I don't see that happening too terribly often outside of a cash game where, you might get a player that's like, well, there's like 2 mild players that are raising and re-raising each other. I can cold call here with like my suited connector and try to get something in there or set mining, something along those lines. Probably not.
It comes down to how many big blinds you have. In cash games, you're just going to have so many more big blinds that the mistake is less. I mean, when you have 1,000 big, if you have 500 big blinds, which is $1,000 stack at 1-2, like if it goes raise to 10, 3-bet to 40, well, you're putting in 40 with 10-9 suited isn't so bad. That's 20 bigs of your 500 bigs. Like you're gambling and you're playing deep poker. Like that's not as bad as you having 26 big blinds and it goes open to 2.5 bigs, re-raise to 7 bigs, and now you have ace queen. You can't really flat 7 of your 28 bigs. And 28 bigs is a lot of bigs in a tournament. I mean, like that's just not a stack you want to just be getting in. So like it's a mistake to get in 28 bigs with ace queen off. It's a mistake to flat 7 bigs with off of 28 bigs with ace queen off. So you're only left with folding, which means like if you're folding ace queen in the spot where you'd be cold calling, there's going to be a lot less opportunities for you to cold call in the tournament.
Okay.
Like
That's
early on in the tournaments, you might see some guys gamble because it's still like relative, blinds are 100, a guy makes it 300, a guy makes it 900. Well, you got ace jack suited for 900 of your 30K starting stack. That's a little
much more likely. Even though
still have 1,000 bigs,
again,
or 300 bigs.
GTO here, that is not the optimal play. Like if there's a bet and a raise or a raise and a re-raise, and you've got ace jack, even if it's suited, like I don't imagine myself getting involved too terribly often unless it's super early in the tournament. It's you're getting in knowing that you're more than likely behind.
Right, you're just kind of gambling, and then you're just gambling, which is deviating.
Because what happens? Yeah, what happens when an ace hits the flop and it's
now you're in no man's land.
Right, it's the worst possible position to be in. There's nothing worse in this game than playing a hand or playing cards, hitting something on the flop, and then going, crap, I still don't know if I'm any good.
And this is why I want to go, and this is jumping kind of all over the place, but remember we talked poker strategy and we talked range advantage way back in quarantine in May or April or something like that. The guy with a 3-bet is just going to have such a range advantage that when an ace hits the flop, if he bets the flop and bets the turn, hands as good as ace jack are going to have to fold, which means like you're just getting owned if you're ace jack. Because like if you have to fold a hand as good as ace jack, like how can you really ever win unless you're going to cooler the guy? Which is why playing in position and why having range advantage matters so much, is because eventually the guy's just going to have to believe you.
Right.
Which is why A, you don't get yourself in that spot with ace jack, and B, when you 3-bet, you use your range advantage and push guys off of hands as good as ace jack. So it's kind of like a double whammy there. But
like it.
I should charge for this content.
No, free content. I love it. This is the advantage that you get for listening to the podcast from us, is that you're getting some pretty insightful things from Brando. I am certainly not the technician here. I'm just the color commentary. I'm the Norman Chad. You're the other guy.
Lon McCarron.
Yeah, isn't Lon McCarron the better player, or is Norman Chad?
Yeah, Norman Chad has like a couple WSOP final tables. Norman Chad is the color commentator.
He's the funny one,
but he's actually probably the better player too.
Really?
Yeah.
So kind of like us.
Right. I'm the funnier one and the better player. It's great.
All right. After the cold call, what do we got next?
We have the overcall.
Okay. I get this one confused as well, so I'm interested in this. Lay it on me. What's an overcall?
So the overcall is basically not really pre-flop. This is talking to maybe like post-flop or on the river. Like the easiest way to describe it is on the river when there's 3 players in the hand. It's the guy that bets the river and then the guy that calls the river, and you're the third player to act, and you overcall.
Oh,
like you. It's almost like
you're the second person
weird, but it's
to
like
call.
a recall,
right?
Like you are calling over that guy's call,
right?
Which is why when you're stuck in the middle of those spots, it really sucks because you can fold out the winner and then have the other guy call where he wouldn't have overcalled. But,
right.
Yeah. So
can you think of a situation where an overcall is a good thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, you're on the river and you're the third player to act, last to act, and you and the second player to act know that the first guy's bluffing, and the first guy bombs the river, and then the guy stuck in the middle knows that the first guy betting is bluffing, so he calls, and you're like, wow, well, I know the first guy's bluffing, and I know that the second guy knows the first guy's bluffing, so I'm going to overcall and think, because I know I have the first guy that bet beat, so I just need to beat the guy that called, and he's probably calling light because he bluffs, and that happens way more times than you think, especially in PLO. Like the guy's repping something, and the board pairs, and the guy just bombs it on the river, and you're like, dude, there's no way he has it. And then the first guy calls with the jack high flush, and you overcall with the ace high flush because you know you have all the flushes beat. Or, the guy in the middle ends up having a capped range as well, because if he had any of the good boats, he would be raising.
He would have raised.
Right, which is why I know I'm like literally flying all over the place here. But when you have the nut straight or the nut flush on the river and you're the middle guy, sometimes it's beneficiary to flat call to get the overcall behind you. Because if you raise, you're never going to get called.
You're not going to get action from either player.
Right. So if you have the nut flush and the guy bets 100 on the river into $100 pot, by you raising it pot to 500, the guy behind you is going to fold the king high flush. So you're never going to get any action from him. So you flat the 100 and then hope the guy behind you has the queen high flush or the king high flush, and then flat calls again. You make an extra $100 by flatting the river with the nuts.
Well, you might even end up making more. But I got you. Make an extra 100 by doing so.
You make that, yeah. I mean, you've already got the first
right, because if there's $100 a pot and the guy bets 100 with a semi bluff or a bluff with a weaker flush, you call with the nut flush, knowing I have the best hand possible. The only way you're going to get the third player in the hand is by him, cold calling yours, overcalling yours. Even I'm using it wrong. Overcall, because you're right. If you raise there, neither one of them are going to call, so you're going to get extra money in the pot by doing so. I always find myself is I have the king high flush calling in the middle, and then the other player is going to raise, and then I'm like, damn it.
So the simple definition, an overcall is a call that comes after somebody has bet and one or more players have already called the bet. So you're not the first player to call. So, I mean, that can happen. I mean, that happens all the time pre-flop. Like, the first guy calls, then you overcall, and another guy overcalls. You don't really define it as an overcall pre-flop, because that happens all the time. Guy raises, guy calls, guy calls, guy calls. Those guys are all overcalling.
Okay.
But this definition is more for like, a guy bets the turn and then another guy calls and then you overcall. Usually it's when you're last to act is when the overcall. A player who makes an overcall to close the action on the river is not usually being all that aggressive. So the guy that's last to act and makes the call, it's more of just like I got a lot of good odds here. Like the first guy could be bluffing. I could have the second guy beat. Because, you really, you're always getting a good price if it's on the river and it goes back call. You're always getting a really good price where you don't have to be that good. So the overcall really isn't like a good play or a bad play. It's just one of those situational spots. Right. It's just a traditional spot.
Nice. I have definitely used the word overcall incorrectly in storytelling.
Shocking.
Nah, not shocking at all. All right, we got two different types of calls left. What do we got, Brandon?
Well, this one's very quick. This one's just the crying call, which the crying call
Glad
is
you went with that one next.
And what?
Go ahead.
Basically, a crying call is just an overcall on the river when you don't have much. It doesn't have to be an overcall, but
do you have to actually complain while
really be good here? But I want show me you're good, or like show me what you got,
or you got an ace, you're good, kind of thing,
right? Or I know I'm beat, but here you go.
Does the crying call by definition have to have the story go along with it? Like, can you do like a mute crying call, or do you have to bitch about it?
You kind of have to complain.
Right. By definition, you have to complain a little bit. Be like, nah, you probably got a full house, but I call. You win, I call.
Yeah, you got me, but
the you got me call is the worst call in the history of poker, because so many times when they're like, you got it, and then they just throw in their money, and then you're like, nope, I was bluffing, you got it. What is the bluff rebluff? I was like there. I was bluffing there. No, me too.
Nope,
no, I had king high. No, yeah, you had the best hand. I had king high. That was good.
The guy shows ace. The guy gets a bluff through, or what he thinks is a bluff. Shows ace high in the river, and you're like, buddy, I had queen high.
That's like the post crying fold.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I like it.
So obviously the crying call is overly passive. It's not aggressive at all. You're just flinging your money in and hoping you got enough pot odds. And
how many people do you think use the crying call and actually think they're good? Like with this whole story of like, you're probably good, I call. I call
Well, the thing
anyways.
is like nobody. I think if if you're getting 6-1, or if it's easy math, if you're getting 4-1 on your money, you only have to be good 20% of the time. I mean, that means you can think you're beat 80% of the time, and it's still correct to call. It's like you're just flinging it in there and hoping that 20% actually exists.
Now,
Because
now that I think about it, I do use decrying call a lot when I like have a big pair. I have aces or kings, and kings are the over pair, but there's just a lot of connected stuff on the board. And the last, I finally check the turn, check the river, and pretty sure I'm not good here most of the time. But like, again, you're like, meh, for another $80. At worst case scenario, I get to see what the guy played me the whole time. Sometimes it's good. Most of the time it's bad.
I mean, most of the time. But that's the thing. It's like, if that guy's bluffing just a little bit at a time, it makes it correct. And they only have to show up there with nothing. 1 out of 5, 1 out of 6, 1 out of 7 times, depending on what the pot odds are. It's just like they're gonna show up without it sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes it is a bluff. Or they're putting you on a range of a big premium hand that didn't connect with anything and anything else. You know what I mean? Like, that's the whole purpose of this game. That's where it gets funky. Like, I start going down these paths of thinking about things. That's why I like PLO so much, because I feel like in PLO, the game is easier in the sense that it's easier to put a player on a hand. Like, if I have dry aces in Omaha and I just ran the whole way through and I missed my flush draw and nothing hit and I'm just got aces, like, there's so many times where I easily can check fold the river, because I'm like, I don't know. It's so hard to put yourself, in pot limit Omaha, at least, where like, I can't believe these aces are good. Like, there's just a simple 2-pair, like just a lucky 2-pair in the river. You're no good anymore.
Right, where they have a straight draw and they have a flush draw and they just pop the 2-pair off. It's easy to get away from it.
But
then it's easy to know, like, it's just like you can go the inverse, and it's like, I know this guy has aces, so when it comes 7, 6, 5, I can just pound it off with everything I have.
Yep.
And that's the thing I think you were getting to with, like, well, if I know this guy has kings, like, I could be betting here and just get him off the kings, and then you make the crying call with kings and I have nothing. And then it's like, wow, maybe I am good here more than I think I am, and these pot odds are actually okay.
Ooh, I like that.
I mean, obviously, it all depends on the player. I mean, you got guys that just never bluff, and then it's easy. And that's why bluffing, even if you aren't a good bluffer, you still have to mix it in, because
sometimes, and again, it's okay to bluff and get caught, because then people can know that you're capable of doing so. So don't feel like it's lost money. It's an investment towards future pots that you're going to win, because you make the same betting structure and you do have the nuts, and you get a call from somebody who's thinking, oh man, he did the exact same thing and had nothing here. I might be good. Right.
And at least it alters their perception of them of you,
which is important. Did you drop your phone there?
I did.
Yeah, nice.
I just denied. I got a phone call and denied it.
Slippery phone call, squish. All right, last type of call.
Oh, this is my favorite call.
Yeah, I feel like this one is one that we can discuss for a few minutes.
The hero call.
Yeah.
So the hero call is when you try to be a hero and call someone down very lightly, not because of the pot odds, not because you're crying and you think that you're beat, but because you think that you're good and you caught on to their bluff, and you put them on a range and that range missed, so you got to be good. Or you thought that he had ace king or ace queen and it came jack, 9, deuce, whatever, and you call him down with the deuce because you think he's got high cards. And that's the hero call. You thinking that you played the hand so well and you know right where you're at and right where they're at, and you think you have the better hand than them.
So, I mean, you're calling with third or fourth pair here, and you're just putting them on a very specific range and being like, my pair of threes here is good because this guy's got ace queen and all he's got is ace high, and my crappy little pair is good.
Right. So, like, very different from, it's a form of a crying call, but it's a different mindset. The crying call is, man, I hope to be good here 1 out of 5 times.
But I'm pretty sure I'm beat.
Right. But I'm like, I think it's the 80%, but the odds just tell me. This is like, well, I have defined this guy's range as ace king, ace queen, king queen, and whatever, like this exact specific range. And the way that he played it on the jack 9, 4, deuce 3 board, like, he doesn't have any jacks and he doesn't have any 9s, so my 4s are good because he's not going to play over pairs this way. So I have to put him on king queen, the missed gutter ball, queen 10, the missed straight, or ace king, or ace queen, or ace 10. All those upper cards that are just ace highs. And so the odds aren't really correct or in my favor. I mean, I guess they are if you think that you're good this percentage of the time, but you're not calling because of the odds. You're calling because you actually think you're good.
So it's the same type of call. It's just a little bit different scenario, which is why it's so tilting when people tell the story and you get the idea of he's like, I was like so sure I was good because I could put him on this hand, and I was like 100% sure that this is where he was, so I hero called and made it work. Be like, well, no, actually that's a crying call that you got lucky with and actually got the 1 out of 20 or 1 out of 5 versus the hero calls where you're like, I knew this guy had it. It's the confidence level, right?
Right. I knew this guy had this hand, and so I picked off his bluff. Yeah. So the hero call is the most fun call. It's also the, I guess, riskiest, and it could easily be perceived as like a punt if you're wrong.
Ooh, I like to use the word punt because I punt a lot in poker.
Right. So the definition here says it might just be a matter of perspective, though, as what one person might describe as a hero call, another might think of as a crying call.
So it's the same. It's the same thing. It's just
the same scenario,
different storytelling. It's a different protagonist in each one. It's interesting.
It is because it's the same form of play, but it's with a different, like you said, different mindset and different reasonings behind why you're calling.
Are there any like super small calls that we missed that we could go over? Or
no,
do we really kind of run down the beginner's course of the advanced poker lingo? Ooh.
I mean, I guess what flat call? Like what's a limp? A limp call? Is that different? A flat call, you're calling a raise. A limp, you're just calling the blind. I mean that's pretty easy. You're limping in there. I guess you're flat calling the big blind. I'm not really sure if that's any different.
I just want to go over the fact that I was just Googling like different types of calls, and there is like a whole on the 2+2 forum, there's like a whole thing on here on like different types of calls. Oh yeah,
from like 2010 though, I saw it.
Oh, did you?
Or like 2012 or something like that.
Yeah,
I was
crazy.
Like, this stuff's
it's too old. Well, good. I mean, I think this is important. And again, this is more, none of these actually matter. Call's a call, raise is a raise, fold's a fold. There's only 3 different ways you can handle a hand. There's only 3 different moves you can make in poker. You can call, you can fold, or you can raise. Doesn't matter which ones they are. However, it is kind of nice when you're going to explain, the hand that you want to talk about, or when, a backer asks you, let me know how the last hand went, or things of that nature. Like, I feel like you can get a read on a player for future games that if they're telling a story and they use the terms incorrectly, it's probably a good chance you could beat that person playing poker.
Yeah.
Right?
I agree.
Because like,
remember, guys, smooth call means you have a good hand. You can't smooth call. Oh, I guess there's another one. Like there's the float, which is a type of call.
Yeah, I float a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you're floating with nothing in hopes to bluff or take the hand away later. I mean, that's a type of a flat call. That's a subset of flat call. I guess you can do it in any, so you can float, you can overcall and float, and, you can cold call. Can't really cold call and float. It's a type of call. I mean, everybody knows what you are floating, but you should have reasons of why you're floating and actually have a plan on what turns and what rivers you're going to take the pot away. And like, again, use the range that you assign them and only bluff when, the right cards come, instead of just like, I'm going to call here and I'm just going to fire every turn and hopefully they fall. Well, that's not going to get it done most of the time.
No, you have to start your bluff from the beginning of the hand. You can't bluff after the entire hand is played out and then be like, oh, I feel like this is a good spot to jam in some chips and hope the other guy folds. That never works out, because then you need to have
a reason.
He makes a hero call. You like that,
right? Like you need to be.
You weren't nearly as excited as I thought you would be when I used the term correctly, hero call.
Well, I mean, I would expect you to use it correctly.
Since we just talked about it
by episode 31, I'd hope that.
I feel like I'm a better player now after talking about all these different things.
Well, can't really be a worse player.
Well, good. That's going to do it. And it's actually the last episode you're going to hear from Brandon. So say goodbye to Brandon, everybody.
All right. Farewell.
Nope. You're still in here. Well, again, thank you for listening to episode 31 of the Overlay, a poker podcast. I want to say thank you to everyone who has subscribed, rated, and reviewed our podcast. We're still getting some more reviews, and we just got over 4,000 downloads. We're up to like 40. We're almost at 5,000. Hang on. 4,200. But that's great. I mean, like, the episodes are doing really well. We're really impressed by how many people are listening to it, and we can't say thank you enough. So, Brandon, tell everybody thank you.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you listening to my semi-pro banter here.
Yeah, no, it's good. I think it's stuff that people want to do, and it's nice to be able to, get lessons in poker in an audio format like this, because it's personal and it's easy, and you don't have to worry about it. Be like, oh, I really don't know what any of these terms are, and you can be, you don't have to be embarrassed by asking Brandon at an event, be like, hey, man, I was thinking about this, and what's this actually called? And like, it's so much better to kind of get these general terms and some different stuff like this. I think it's interesting. I think it's good.
I enjoy it. Also, we did change the Twitter handle, right?
Oh, yeah, update. We did change the Twitter handle, made it a little bit simpler. It's just The Overlay Pod. So at The Overlay POD, which stands for podcast, not that song POD.
Isn't that a band?
Yeah. We are the youth of the nation. Remember that song?
Yeah.
I think that's POD. So that's what it is, at the Overlay Pod. So we're going to go ahead and check all of those out. Thank you for listening. Hit that thumbs up button. Share us with your friends. Come and say hello to us at an event, which actually happened on Sunday when you weren't there. A guy came up and he's in the Army. Christian, shout out. Hopefully he listens to the podcast as well. He came out and he was like, hey, Ken, I watch your videos. They're so good, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, and then I told him about the podcast, and he was like, wow, you guys have a podcast too? And I was like, man, this guy's a super fan. I wish there were like 50 of them in the room, because that's all we can have right now. So I wouldn't want to wish more than 50, but someday I'll wish for more.
Yeah, guys, the events are rocking.
Yeah, this past Sunday in October, like 19th or something, 18th, was crazy good cash games. So come out and see us at an event in Chicago. Come out to Paramount, see us there. We are planning on, I'm going to be in Houston in the beginning of November, the first Saturday of November. So come and check us out there. And besides that, thank you for listening. Rate us, review us, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Brandon, lead us out.
Farewell, everyone.
See you, everybody. Thanks for listening. Catch you next time. Bye.